Effects Take 5, Art Blakey's Moanin', a prolific amount of Miles Davis classics, including the masterpiece that is Kind of Blue. Ornette Coleman nailed it on the head with his contribution to this truly iconic year for music entitled The Shape of Jazz to Come, 1959. Mingus, Charles Mingus' first album for Columbia Records. Not only do I consider this the iconic bassist's best work, I also think it's the best jazz record of all time. Standing on the shoulders of giants, this collection of classics complements the genre as a whole, while simultaneously stretching it wide open. Comfortable, sassy, reflective, loud, pristine, and playful. All of these compelling contradictions can be heard within 5 minutes of dropping that needle to wax. Better Get It In Your Soul, an aggressive, almost threatening title for an absolute barn burner of an opening track. Behind the singable driving force of the melody, a chaotic smattering of scat shouts. An energetic introduction as every band member gets a chance to shine through instrumental vignettes showcasing their skill. Mingus is John Handy, Shafi Hadi, and Booker Ervin sharing sax duties with Willie Dennis and Jimmy Knepper on trombone. Most of them spread across the different numbers, while Danny Richmond keeps things in check as the stationary percussionist. Mingus, of course, plays on all pieces as well, while Horace Parlan plays piano throughout. A masterclass of musicians who would mostly go on to continue with the bassist for some of his best recordings. The original production is both airy and crisp, a sound that wasn't entirely captured here on this re-release, but we'll get into that a bit later. Perhaps my favorite aspect of the production is the sequencing of tracks. For the majority, this album bounces back and forth between lively numbers and quieter ones. It keeps things fresh and interesting compared to a lot of records that become stale or redundant. To me, there's nothing worse than a lot of similar songs appearing one after the other in any genre of music. Regardless of the quality of the performances, this kind of stuff just lulls me to sleep. It's almost like a wall of familiarity. There's none of that here, as every big jazz number gets paired with an equally impressive, slower one. Goodbye, Pork Pie Hat is the first of these. This second track sways to and fro in a lackadaisical way as the boozy brass and bass switch things up. The tight-knit collection of musicians make all of the pie-eyed swagger, or perhaps in this case, stagger, of the song seem easy and effortless to perform, even if that's hardly the case. Next, we cast our webs along the skyline of New York City with Boogie Stop Shuffle, an unapologetically catchy number that Paul Francis Webster and Bob Harris clearly heard at least once in their life before composing the infinitely more famous Spider-Man theme from the 60s. Lively, rambunctious, and a bit silly, Mingus's bass dances behind the precise bursts of brass that come through like car horns. Simply next level stuff here. Possibly my favorite track of the bunch, but that really depends on the day. Self-Portrait in Three Colors is the first traditional jazz piece on the record, a song initially written for Shadows, John Cassavetes' directorial debut, ultimately unused and repurposed for Mingus. It gives me that vibe of something that could be played non-offensively in the background in a smoky lounge, but it's anything but boring. There are some intentionally uneven bits that give the entire thing a last call kind of feel, a reminder of days past with an optimistic, forward-focused approach. This is the tune I think of when looking at the cover art, which itself was taken from an S. Neil Fujita painting. This was a watershed moment for Mingus, a chrysalis. These visuals perfectly exhibit the changes that are seemingly occurring throughout the course of the album. Once again, the sequencing assists in making all things past and present more digestible, as Self-Portrait is paired with Open Letter to Duke, a love letter to the origins of jazz that opens as furiously as a late-night talk show. Shafi Hadi and Willie Dennis are the real stars here, as well as the excellent bombastic drums, a worthy salute to one of Mingus's greatest musical inspirations. This Duke Ellington approximation reminds the listener that jazz used to be dance music, and that a shiny new contract hasn't distracted the composer from remembering his roots. Definitely a quality piece of music that is larger than the sum of its parts. Side 2 breaks the pattern by opening with another high-tempo track. Bird Calls is an apt title for this avian-influenced mess of sounds. I say mess, but it's really quite spectacularly composed. It's kicked off with a harshness that I'm sure latter-era Coleman fans appreciate, but I'm pretty picky when it comes to chaotic music, so this one it's a bit much for me most days. It quickly settles into a tasty piano groove that harkens back to the days of Charlie Parker's music, so it's definitely not bad, but that bird mimicry causes a lot of anxiety. At the very least, Mingus masterfully recreated that feeling I get on a dewy spring morning, trying to sleep in while that one feathery freak foils my plans. The others are fine, but that screechy little punk, I get what they were going for, and they succeeded, but yeah, I don't know. There aren't any bad tracks on this album, but Bird Calls is definitely my least favorite. Fortunately, Fables of Faubus slows things down again, one that bounces from one idea to the next seamlessly, centrally focused around the protest of a former Arkansas governor who went to extreme lengths to prevent integration in a high school. Mingus's notorious temper justified in this case, as his anger seethes through the speakers on this song, that was once intended to have anti-fascist lyrics, before Columbia, naturally, requested it be reworked. Despite the subject matter, Fables is one I've heard out in the wild more than others, and for good reason. The driving harmony is memorable, and the tempo changes give it some complex levity, which I'm sure was playful sarcasm on Mingus's part due to perhaps his frustration. Obviously, I'm listening to all this from my perspective, so maybe others hear it differently. From foul to feline, Pussycat Doos is sleek, sly, and a bit sassy, with a bit of a Blake Edwards cinematic streak, or rather the other way around. This is a great tune, very bluesy under all of the playfulness. The longest track on the record, but it never overstays its welcome. Jelly Roll closes out the original set of tunes with a catchy swagger. There's a farewell quality to its jaunty rhythm that acts as an appropriate send-off. Jelly Roll Morton's Dixieland ragtime references can be heard here, with its relaxed, Mingus-led bass line being the true highlight. Reissues would later include a few bonus tracks, but I always prefer listening to the originals. When CDs became the new thing, it seemed music companies couldn't bear to waste a millisecond of space, which resulted in bloated albums that would almost always surpass the 1 hour mark. When I want to digest a full record, less is often more, quality over quantity and all that. Sometimes bonus material doesn't blend very well with the original stuff production-wise. My reissued collection of metal vinyl from the 80s and early 90s is perfect proof of that. When it comes to this reissue provided by the creatively named Jazz Wax Records, I know, it really depends on what you're looking for. Personally, I find it to be a rather thin, brittle transfer. The separation is satisfying, but it definitely lacks the low-end oomph of the original. Now, I'm comparing this to what I think was an original pressing a former bandmate of mine played me decades ago, so take that with a grain of salt. As a discount product to listen to while I keep my eyes peeled for a superior alternative, this is a decent substitute. If you're simply looking to fill out your jazz collection or just don't care about the details, this is a passable transfer, though these days the prices are going up, so I'd suggest saving the cash and going with a downloadable version or audio CD instead. Next time on this channel, a free view, everyone's favorite, so stay tuned.